Okay, go ahead.
All right, so we're up to speed, so I bang the gavel, but nobody can hear. So I'm the vice chair right now, and will be acting until January when we have our election for the chair of sewers. So just so you know what we're doing. And with that, we can move on to, there's no delegation, so we'll go to management report, which is Sewer Commission management report for December for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
And anybody, any comments from anyone on that? Seeing none, I assume nobody has a problem with that. Not seeing any, we can move along and we'll go to minutes of the Comox Valley Sewer Management Advisory Committee meeting for November 26th for receipt.
I'll move receipt. Minions.
Second, Warren.
Second, okay. And any questions or concerns? Okay, seeing none, we'll consider that passed, and we will move on to the recommendation, which is, without reading the whole thing, we're going to be looking at improvement of the.
Chair will just start with receipt of the report.
Oh, sorry, did I miss that? Sorry, I missed that. Sorry, yeah, so move receipt of the report for November 26th.
Move receipt, Cole Hamilton.
Seconded.
All right, and then any questions or comments on that?
Chair and Commissioners, Chris LaRose is here to provide a presentation of this report and answer any questions with respect to the preferred level of treatment for the sewage system on the basis of the liquid waste management planning process.
All right, so Chris, it's all yours.
Thanks, Russell, and through the Vice Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. So it's a big report on your agenda, but I was just planning to provide a relatively brief synopsis and then be available for any questions or discussion. The liquid waste management plan was initiated in 2018 and with a focus on three areas: finding the optimal conveyance solution for wastewater from the major pump stations to the treatment plant, the level of treatment at the treatment plant, and a third component to look for further opportunities to exploit resource recovery within our operations. So technical and public advisory committees were developed to help guide the planning process, and they initially discussed each of these components at each meeting, but eventually these were separated given the scale of the task. But also to prioritize the more urgent conveyance at the beginning, and then later on to fill the gaps when conveyance was more focused on consultation. The staff report summarizes the TAC-PAC evaluation process and puts forth a recommendation that is consistent with the recommendation that came out of the advisory committee. So a long list of 4 treatment options was shortened to 3, each of which includes addition of the same level of ultraviolet treatment, disinfection at the plant. And so this was in line with the previous commitment by the Commission in 2017. So the 3 options were on the short list were, so option 2 was essentially staying the course. So secondary treatment of all flows. The option 3 was addition of some filtration, as much as necessary to treat up to twice the average dry weather flow. And then option 4, the third one, was addition of sufficient filtration to filter all the flows. So option 2 is recommended by the TAC-PAC and supported by staff with the recommendation in the staff report, because adding disinfection to the treatment plant, it will be a major step forward in terms of effluent quality all by itself. And the plant is already performing very well and well under its regulated effluent quality limits. So to summarize, adding filtration would be expensive and would not significantly improve the effluent quality at the plant. Other key outcomes from this part of the planning process include a recommendation to include language in the liquid waste management plan itself committing to include provisions in the design of upgrades at the facility that would facilitate addition of filtration to the plant in the future, if desired or required by regulation. Also, that a site master plan be developed for the treatment plant, and that the results of that plan be fed into and be embedded in the stage 3 plan. And finally, that a site master plan, that the planning process include assessment of further reclaimed water use at the plant. And that was the one further resource recovery opportunity that was identified by the process, was further displacing the use of potable water for the process at the treatment plant. So next steps are for incorporation of the recommended treatment level into the stage 2 plan, and that will be brought forward to the commission in its final draft form for review in the early to mid spring, and then into the site master planning process that will be started around that same time. As an aside, the conveyance project is proceeding well, and staff are hopeful that we'll be bringing forward a recommended path forward on the conveyance element in February of 2021. That's it for me, but I'm happy to support any discussion or answer any questions.
Okay, anybody got any questions? Somebody must have something, no? Okay.
I do.
Doug, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And I'll just acknowledge that this is my first meeting since resuming assignment to the Sewage Commission after a year. Thanks very much for the report. I've missed these multi-page reports, I must say. I did want to just confirm that there are no implications in this report for the odor issues that are being managed in relation to the nearby residents. And if Chris, if you could comment on that, please.
Sure. So we've earlier this year, when we committed to covering the bioreactors, I mean, inherent in that commitment, I believe, was a commitment to cover all such future tankage at the treatment plant. So the site master planning process that's mentioned in the report and in my synopsis, as well as in the third part of the recommendation, will be looking at developing a definitive plan for or schedule for upgrades at the treatment plant. And some of those upgrades will involve additional tankage, so processing tanks, so whether primary, secondary tanks. And so our, like I said, I think implied in the commitment in February of this year was a commitment that all future such tankage would be covered. So that will certainly be a key part of the master planning process, that assumption that all such future tankage will be covered. So with that in mind, and that assumption did form a part of the modeling that went into supporting that recommendation early in 2020. So the site master, so to summarize, the site master plan will involve scheduling of additional tankage and will include an assumption that all such future tankage will be covered. And the odor control system that's being installed now as a result of that February motion is being sized to handle the air from that additional tankage.
Thanks very much.
And then we have Maureen.
Thanks. Thanks, Chris. I'm just mindful of the cost of all these things. And I know we haven't seen the final cost of the conveyance one. But if this treatment's around 120 per household, and then we have the conveyance, which is rough and dirty, another 200 per household, when do you see these costs kicking in? Like, when would be the earliest, and what would be the timeline for the treatment, for instance?
Yeah, so the timeline for the tax impacts from the conveyance are more firm, in that we expect those to be incurred, starting in roughly 2024. The timing of the treatment impacts in terms of taxation will be firmed up through the site master planning process because they don't tend to occur all at once. So it is a schedule of upgrades. But we could expect the first piece of that to be roughly the same time as the conveyance, so 2024, 2025, with additional increments coming in several year increments after that.
Okay, thank you. And then if I could just have a subsequent, it's not really directly related to this report, but I did bring it up at the liquid waste management plan meeting and the whole notion of disaster mitigation. Because I don't think we would be going ahead with these projects at this time, particularly if we weren't worried about the Willamar Bluffs. So I don't know if there's any, if you've given that any further thought or something that we can discuss at another time.
I'm sorry, Director, I might have missed the question. There was, are you asking was that a question whether whether these upgrades at the treatment plant are being driven by the need to decommission the Willamar Bluffs?
Not actually, not particularly. I recognize that, but I was thinking of the conveyance itself.
In terms of an update on that process?
Chris, I think.
No,
asking if-
in terms of the ability to access any monies through a disaster mitigation grant program.
Okay. We're certainly keeping our eyes on and carefully reviewing the program details from all funding programs that are announced. Did you have a specific fund in mind?
No, I haven't been watching them. It's just to say that I think that is disaster mitigation is what has driven the process to begin with. So I would be hopeful that maybe we could get some money in from that end.
Okay, so we'll certainly look at it with that lens and see if there are any opportunities through the disaster mitigation angle. Thank you.
Thanks.
And then Director Morin.
Great, thank you, Vice Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm happy to have Director Hillian back to join me in reading these long reports. I just wanted to note that that there were some folks on the TAC PAC who didn't prefer option 2, and I just wanted to acknowledge that some of their feedback was around having allowances for regulations that will inevitably change, and concerns about contaminants in the system not being addressed, and various other comments. And while I really respect those views, and I understand that it would be nice to be able to have technology that is looking forward and kind of giving us the gold seal of addressing these concerns for future. And this is, as noted, a really expensive project and does have quite an implication to households, even in the more the lesser financial obligations. So I just wanted to acknowledge that we did receive some feedback on the TAC PAC that wasn't in favor of the recommendation, and I do respect those views, but I think we have to look at all these considerations, and in an ideal world, we'd be able to exceed I know that we're already exceeding current regulations, but we'd like to look to the future further down the road. But I think this is a good middle ground, and option 2 does score higher regarding some climate change goals that we have. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Director Moran, for highlighting the dissent letters. I was remiss in not mentioning them in my synopsis. So yes, there were two received, both with similar points. One from one of the Area B public representatives, Mary Lang, and the other from the Chamber of Commerce representative. And they did reference a number of different points, but both mentioned the fact that certain key stakeholders were not present at the final kind of completion of the evaluation, and they mentioned the KFN and the BC Shellfish Growers Association and Island Health. And so I just wanted to point out that all three of those stakeholders, including the Comox First Nation, were invited to participate in the meetings, and that the KFN had previously indicated that they wanted to participate or be consulted independently from the TACPAC process, which is to explain why they weren't there. And the BC Shellfish Growers Association and the Underwater Harvesters Association had previously attended numerous meetings and had, I think, my takeaway had concluded that the addition of the disinfection, achieved their short-term goals for sewage effluent in the area, and they did not speak out against the decision not to take the additional step of adding filtration. But so both letters are attached to the staff report if any of the directors want to take a closer look.
That's great. Thank you very much for clarifying those points. I think that's really important to note that those stakeholders were consulted and did have an opportunity to provide feedback. Thank you.
And then Will.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I was going to, as a member of the TACPAC, I was going to make some reference to some of the points that Director Moran brought up and that Mr. LaRose mentioned. The two stakeholders who were not at that meeting had been invited to all the meetings throughout the process and were not able to attend. But as was, I think, mentioned, they had the right to, I believe, to file a letter of dissent if they weren't in disagreement. And that was not the case, which I took as encouraging. And the two letters, I can see the logic behind what they're saying, that it's best to plan ahead and perhaps to try and anticipate, but it's a dangerous game to try and anticipate exactly what future standards will look like. And I think the compromise of option 2, which improved the quality of water with UV filtration over what we currently have, but we just didn't feel, given the cost of the overall project, that spending further to exceed limit requirements at this time made sense. So I think it was. I can certainly understand the points made, but in those two dissenting letters. But I think in the interest of finding a middle ground that was affordable for people in this community, this was, I think, a good decision. And the stage 3 plan, my understanding is that everything will be developed with an eye towards likely future, making it easier to integrate disc filtration if it becomes required. So there's an element of foresight in this plan as well, which so just want to thank staff. It was a long process, and Director Swift knows that too. It's a lot of meetings over a lot of years. This one that we're discussing now is January of last year. So it's, anyway, thanks so much to staff, and I look forward to supporting this.
And I don't see anyone else. So is there anyone opposed to receipt? Seeing none, we'll move on to the recommendation, and that is that we would approve treatment option 2, and further that it would have the ability to add filtration, a higher level of filtration in the future, and that we will study the reclaimed water. So can someone move the recommendation?
I'll move the recommendation.
And I think I heard a first and a second there. So any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in, well, I guess we have to go through the roll on this one. So we'll start with, you're bouncing around here on my list. So Director Moran.
In favor.
Director Swift.
In favor.
Director Cole-Hamilton.
In favor.
Director Hillian.
In favor.
Okay, hang on, and Director Minions.
In favor?
And everybody's name is bouncing around on my screen, so it's hard to tell. Did I get everybody there except for myself? I'm in favor. So that passes unanimously. And with that, I believe we need to move into in camera pursuant to subsection 90 of the community charter. So if someone want to move that,
So moved.
Second, Moran.
okay. And all those in favor?